WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson, recapping this past weekend's wrestling action. And Jeff, we got a lot to go over. But first and foremost, one thing that to make this work, we've had some connectivity issues, and Jeff tried to blame me for a while, but we noticed that one of the issues was on his end, and of course I can't see his video. But Jeff, you're not sporting an Allegheny County team with the shirt today. What's going on here?
Well, I mean, I'm sporting a it's Pittsburgh wrestling. I mean, I don't have just endless shirt supplies like you do.
No, that's you. You do have endless shirt supplies.
Okay. I'm
Yes.
glad you took your Christmas tree down. When did you take your Christmas tree down?
That was actually yesterday. Yeah.
Wow, good for you. Was that during or after the Steelers game? Because I turned that off pretty quick. I don't know about you.
Oh, that was before. I mean, the first quarter, I don't know why you would turn that off because the defense looked amazing.
I said early on. I think after the third quarter, after they scored their fifth touchdown, I said this is enough. Then I turned it off.
Well, I mean, when the offense goes 3 and out every single time, the defense is eventually going to end up giving up some points to that offense. But I'm sporting the Hampton shirt today. I was just looking, actually. This is the only Allegheny County team that I have a shirt for. So some of the teams out there, listen, you need to hook a guy up because this is the only one. But hey, I love my Hampton Talbots. Coach Hart, Coach Bursick, those guys are fantastic.
I'm surprised you don't have a South Fayette shirt. You're tight with South Fayette.
I moved into the area, and I actually was talking to Rick Shossard this past weekend. I said, hey, I moved in. He goes, you got any boys? I do. It's a 6-month-old, though. He goes, I don't think I'll be around that long. But Rick's gonna hook me up for sure, and we'll see if he'll hook you up, Jeff. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we had a great time at the Allegheny County Tournament. We covered the quarters, semis, consolation semis, and medal round matches, and I know I had a good time. I know you did on the finals broadcast. That was a fun finals. There was a few matches where you're like, not a lot happening, and then all of a sudden things started to pick up. There was a lot of back and forth matches. So I'm excited to recap that, but there was a ton of other action that went on this weekend. Of course, Escape the Rock was going on. Not a ton of WPIAL teams there, but some bright spots, and also the Connellsville Duals. If I hadn't gone to Allegheny County, I 100% would have been at the Connellsville Duals because you had some top teams like Connellsville, like Kiski, like Cannon Mac, Penn Trafford. So, we certainly have a lot to recap.
Well, let's dive right into it. At 106 pounds, the champion was Casey Walker of North Allegheny. He defeats Ryland Campbell of Plum 10-6. And the big match also was in the semifinals where Walker defeated Giovanni Schapani of North Hills 5-4. So Walker with a couple of big wins, and Schapani ends up coming back for third. But a couple of takeaways. One, Walker did a nice job of winning those two matches. I also I didn't know a lot about Ryland Campbell going into the tournament, Jeff, but I thought he wrestled really well. And if it wasn't for the fact that he had a bloody nose every 10 seconds, it killed his momentum. He may have been walking away with the title.
Yeah, that was a back and forth match. I mean, those two were flopping around, reversal. And Casey Walker had a phenomenal Allegheny County tournament. Let's not forget last year he was 1-4, I think, against Schapani. In fact, he was tech falled by Giovanni last year. So turn around a tech fall to beating him that's monumental. That's huge, right? His progression has been pretty steady. So I wasn't surprised to see him come away with a title. But like you said, Ryland Campbell, probably one of the bigger takeaways for me was watching him, up close and personal and seeing him battle because, like you said, he was right in that match, and that was certainly a close match.
113 pounds, your champion was Jack Cazalis of Quaker Valley. He wins by fall over Aiden Bench of Bethel Park in the finals. Really, the finals match was in the semifinals against Brady Joling of Chartiers Valley. Joling ends up coming back for third, but Cazalis ends up winning the match 4-2, and it was actually Joling who led the match for pretty much the entirety of it until late when Cazalis was able to get the win.
Yeah, you were on that call, right? When he hit
Yep.
It was a headlock, and he hit it, and Joling, went from a good position to all of a sudden losing the match, right? That was certainly the finals in my mind, watching Jack and Brady going at it. And Brady's had, a good year. He's had an up and down year. He's had a really good showing, and then other matches you're like, scratching your head, and you're like, what are you doing? And you just got to wrestle a full 6 minutes, right? Because Cazales is a very dangerous wrestler, and clearly he got a fall in under a minute in the finals, and Joling got a fall in 15 seconds in the third place match. So obviously that was the finals at 113.
Yeah, I was very. I mean, obviously, we were impressed by Brady Joling at Powerade. He had a really great showing, despite not getting a medal. I mean, he wrestled phenomenal, and the way he and Cazales battled. I mean, take away the last 10 seconds of that match, and Joling wins, and Joling was the better wrestler in it. So that just goes to show you how much he's improved from last year to this year.
Yeah, I was
One,
overall. I was improved. I was impressed with Bethel Park overall, and I know we're going right into 120 pounds, but Bethel Park, for not having a strong team per se, they had some strong individual performances.
Yeah, no doubt. And that one was at 120. Mason Kernan, he wins a title in a 6-5 victory over Dominic Ferrero of Pine Richland. Ferrero, I thought, wrestled a great tournament as well. Luke Dunlap of South Fayette comes in third. He beats Logan Ritchie of Quaker Valley for third and fourth. Also had to beat his teammate James Anderson as well. But yeah, Kernan, a great tournament. Ferraro, a great tournament as well.
Yeah, Dunlop only being a freshman, he again, like you said, had almost like a wrestle off with him and James Anderson. I know you talked to South Fayette, and I think they want one of them to go down to 113 to get them both in the lineup. Kernan, though, I mean, he's undefeated. He's an undefeated county champion this year, and he's wrestled really well after a mediocre freshman campaign. I think he had a good year, but he certainly didn't make the noise that I think he probably wanted to. And Dom Ferrero, again, Pine Richland, just like Bethel Park, I thought, despite having a lot of bright spots, I thought they wrestled really well. And even in those losses, because him and his brother Anthony both wrestled tough guys in the finals at the Allegheny County Tournament.
Yeah, the plan is for Dunlap to go down to 113 potentially. I mean, I know there's basically Coach Oster mentioned that if one of them's going to go down, they got to do it soon because they're running out of time. So, but yeah, that's the problem. They have everybody bunched together in certain weights. But yeah, you mentioned and Dunlap, by the way, his loss was to Kernan in the quarterfinals, a 3-0 loss. So that's where his loss came from. 126, you mentioned his brother and Anthony Ferraro. He comes in second place. He battled Dylan Coy tough, but Dylan Coy of North Allegheny wins the title with a 4-0 decision. And Brandon Cruel of Quaker Valley, how about he wins back-to-back matches against Antonio Walker of Plum to finish in third place, Walker in fourth.
Yeah, I mean, Cruel had a great tournament, beating Antonio Walker twice. Walker being a state qualifier last year. Cruel was a transfer from Mars, and he was certainly a good wrestler, but this year we've got to see him in a couple of events, and he's looked really good thus far. So he had a good tournament. Obviously we wanted to see a Dylan Coy Maddox Shaw rematch, but Shaw went up to 132, which we're gonna talk about here in just a little bit. But Dylan was certainly tested against Ferraro. I mean, I think we needed to see that type of performance from Dylan, grinding out a win over a guy that, you should beat, but is certainly going to push you and look to upset a guy like Dylan Coy, So overall, I thought he wrestled really well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Coy was in control the entire time, and he's just very, very tough on top. And that goes to show. I mean, even in the match against Maddox Shaw that he lost, it was a defensive fall, and it was late. It was like about 5 seconds left in the period, so he basically rode Shaw the entire period. So, Dylan Coy, if he can get his takedown, he can get his escape or reversal, he's going to win the match because he's just so good on top. And
Right.
so, that's something he's just got to carry into the postseason. And when he's getting into those tougher matches, he's got to get that takedown and get that escape or reversal, though. And that's where he's kind of, I think, come up short a little bit in the state tournament. 132 pounds, we talked a little bit about it. So Maddox Shaw goes up a weight class. And there was really 4 very tough wrestlers here in this weight. Vinny Citrano of Plum, he wins the title, a 3-2 win over Maddox Shaw in the finals. Shaw had to beat Kyvon Grace of Moon, a 1-0 win in the semis. Citrano had to beat Nathan Monapart of North Allegheny. He beat him 5-1 to get to that final, and then Grace ends up beating Monapart for third and fourth. But 4 very tough guys here at 132.
I mean, I think it was probably the one of the, if not the deepest weight classes of the tournament. To be honest with you, I mean, obviously with Shaw coming up, that added a lot of talent there. But Grace and Monapart and even Braden White from Highlands is super tough for a freshman. Bryce Rodriguez. So you look at the depth here at 132, it was pretty stacked.
And joining us now is the champion at 132, Vinny Citrano of Plum. Vinny, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your Allegheny County title. Like Jeff and I were just talking about, probably the most difficult weight class of the tournament. Going into it, did you know it was going to be a challenge to come out on top of this one?
I did. I mean, my coaches and I talked about it probably a week before that. And they told me I was the third seed. And told me he was in front of me. And I said, all right, let's go to work.
And obviously, you did just that, a semifinal win over Nathan Monapart 5-1. Talk a little bit about that semifinal match and what went right for you.
Me just staying in really good position. I know he was trying to use his length and trying to move me, and I just stayed in really good position and just found my shot and just stayed patient the whole time.
And then that obviously propelled you into the finals where you took on Maddox Shaw. Shaw obviously getting a lot of headlines for his performance at the Powerade tournament and finishing in second place. Bumps up to 132, but really throughout that match, it felt like you had control. You got the opening takedown and really just were able to take that to end up getting the victory. Talk a little bit about that match and what went right for you.
Again, just position and mindset. Just going to that, just wanting to have fun and just going out there and just being me. And my coaches believed in me, my teammates believed in me, everyone believed in me that I could do some really great things and wrestle with the best guys. And this win kind of showed that a little bit, but I mean, we're not done here.
Vinny, when you look at your career as a whole, I mean, you've had a really good career, but if in terms of having state qualifications or state medals to your name, you haven't quite hit that peak yet. And I was going through and looking at your career, and you were battling guys like Carter Dybert, Ethan Bergen, time and time again in your section and the regional tournament. We had Troy Homan on a few weeks back after he won the Powerade, and he was throwing you a lot of love. He was like, Vinny Citrano, he's a tough kid. He beat my butt quite a few times, right? And that's coming from a state medalist who's going to NC State, right? What has your career, if you could sum up your career to this point, how would you sum it up? And why is 2022 going to be different than the last 3 years?
If I could sum up my career, it'd probably be a roller coaster. Some highs, some really lows, but through the whole thing, it's exciting. It's exciting, and it's just a thrill. And 2022, I kind of changed some things up. I found some new ways, and I kind of changed my whole style up. I went to Texas over the summer and trained with one of the best coaches in the nation. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't know him. He's probably one of the most technical coaches I've ever been with. His name's John Hardy. I just want to give a little shout out to him. But I mean, overall, it's been awesome. And this year it's changed. I've just had a lot of fun in the room and on the mat. And it's never been like that. I've always been super tight and serious. But this year I've kind of just been letting it fly.
And when you look at just this season thus far, you've had some pretty big wins. You've beaten some guys with some credentials, right? You beat Kyle McCullum. You beat Nick Jones from West Allegheny, a tough Gabe Regaria from Connellsville. But this was really your first, consistent grind, of a tournament. Afterwards, you kind of let out a lot of emotion. Like, this really meant a lot for you. I know it's not the end goal, and I know you're going back to the room and working, but it seemed like for a moment there, you just really let out, like, man, I needed this one, or I wanted to have this one. Is that how you felt afterwards?
Yeah, I love the competition. I love those tough matches where the crowd and the people are like, oh, who's going to win this match? And they know it's going to be a tough dog fight out there. And I really wanted to go out there and just show that I can compete with the best and I belong with the best.
Now, looking ahead to the rest of your season, you have the Buckeye Local Panther coming up. That's out of Ohio. That's always got some tough teams in it. But then you're going into the team and then individual. So, I know you said the mindset is having fun and kind of not being tight. How do you continue that throughout the year? Because obviously, regular season is one thing, but postseason, entirely different animal. What is going to be different about you going into this postseason? Having been there, a 3-time regional qualifier, you've been super close multiple times to getting, to Hershey. What's going to be different about this year, and how good is it going to feel to walk into the Giants Center on the floor and looking up and knowing like I get to compete in the pinnacle of Pennsylvania wrestling?
I mean, it'll feel awesome when it happens, but I mean, we need to get there first, and we need to just do all the right things. And the main thing that has helped me throughout this postseason is preparation. Focused on my preparation, what I'm eating, how much sleep am I getting, just staying on top of everything, discipline, doing my homework every night, getting up, going to practice, being on time, focusing on what I need to do in practice, doing some extra sprints after practice, and just feeling really good in my preparation. So when I go out there, I have nothing to worry about and I can just have fun.
Well, Vinny, with this being your senior season, have you made a decision on, what you're going to do post high school?
I'm definitely going to wrestle post high school. Right now I'm undecided.
Have you any schools or anything reach out to you, or anyone that you're interested in?
I mean, I'm pretty interested in some schools like the University of Minnesota. Pretty interested in them. I have some other schools like the Citadel. I talked to their coach a couple days ago, and talking to other schools like D2 schools like Gannon and Mercyhurst. I've talked to them a little bit, and they're all just amazing people, and just I'm kind of enjoying the process a little bit, but I also just want to stay focused on the season and what my goals.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us on the show. Congratulations on winning an Allegheny County title, and best of luck as you head through the rest of the season and into the postseason.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinny. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Vinny Citrano, nice enough to join us on the show. And Jeff, when you look at Vinny and the whole weight class in the WPIAL, not to go off topic from the Allegheny County Tournament, but just want to talk about this for a moment. You got Mac Church at the top at 132. I think he's above and beyond everybody else at 132 at this moment, considering what he did at Powerade. But Citrano's, I think, right there, number 2, right? I mean, you got Blake Greener, you got Chad Ozias, and then you get into the Monopart Grace. But Citrano's right there. Is that probably that next best after Church?
Yeah, I mean, I have him ranked number 5 in the state. So, I mean, I think that goes to show you how, certainly my opinion of him and where he should be. I think he's a guy that can battle for a state, a state medal, no doubt. And we're seeing something different with him this year. And I think, like you said, the mindset is obviously a big one, right? His ability to control matches and control his emotions, and just kind of let loose, because oftentimes we see those wrestlers that are talented just tighten up. So obviously I think he's one of the best, not only in the WPIAL but in the state. But the problem with guys like him are, you're in the WPIAL, right? You're in District 7, where your first couple matches are not easy matches at the regional tournament. They're tough matches, right? You may have a county tournament final in the quarterfinal of WPIAL. So yeah, Mac Church, obviously, having a returning state champ in the weight, you got to set your goals and your aims high. So yeah, I agree. I think he's right there, but he certainly still has some more to prove in order to convince us that, like, hey, he's definitely going to Hershey.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, we mentioned those other names, Blake Green or Chad Ozias. I mean, those guys are equally as good, and they're going to definitely challenge him for sure. Right now I give that edge to him, but definitely it's going to be a dogfight with some of those guys, and that's one thing about Vinny is I think the weight classes he's been in all these years have just
Yeah.
been so loaded that it's no wonder he hasn't been able to get to that state tournament. Because of the fact that the weight classes were just so tough in the WPIAL, but
There
that's
hasn't been a
that
year, there
goes.
hasn't been a year where he hasn't been behind somebody with a state medal or a state championship. I apologize, a state championship, right?
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Carter Dybert, Ethan Bergnick were two guys that he was behind for 3 years. So that's when you're behind a guy with a state championship already, and even this year, I mean, he's in a weight where there's a state champion.
Yeah.
There's only a certain amount of spots, right? And sometimes really good wrestlers don't make it out. So, it is what it is. But I think he's poised to continue this run.
Let's move now to 138 pounds. Your champion at 138 was Bodie Marlowe of Thomas Jefferson. He won in the finals over Peter Chacon Montour 6-2. Marlowe, another freshman, just like Maddox Shaw. And boy, these two are going to be fun to watch from TJ.
But he was really impressive in the finals here. I mean, he did not look like a freshman out there.
No.
He was very calm, cool, composed. He was tough on top. He got a turn. He was just, clearly he and Maddox Shaw wrestle a lot together because they looked very similar in their styles. And, obviously Shaw's that guy that everyone's talking about, but Marlowe is somebody who should not be taken for granted or taken lightly, because I was really impressed with the way he beat a pretty seasoned wrestler in Chacon. So Marlowe getting that title was pretty big.
145. How about the tournament for Drake Burford of Highlands? He ends up winning in the semifinals by fall and late in the third period in a match he was trailing 10-6 to Chase Brandenburg of Carlinton. Brandenburg comes back for third. Then in the finals, Burford in a scoreless match puts Travis Stipetich of North Allegheny onto his back and pins him. Back-to-back falls for Burford, and that propels him to the title.
Growing up, I had a coach that always would say, you can pin people you can't beat. And, there was a lot of times when you're like, man, I shouldn't have beat that guy, but I pinned him, right? I'm not saying Drake is the guy who shouldn't have beaten Chase Brandenburg, but like Brandenburg was controlling the match, right? And when you have somebody as dangerous as Burford, he's an accomplished wrestler. I mean, he's done a lot on the national stage coming up as a youth wrestler. I can remember hearing about him for a long time, and the kid's no stranger to success or to high-level competition. So it's not a surprise, right? But as you mentioned, Travis Stipetich, he had been wrestling well down at 45 for the first time this season. But Burford, man, when he's on, he's on. So watch out. I wouldn't want to be, I wouldn't be drawing him in the opening rounds.
152 pounds featured number 1 versus number 2 in the state. Kellen Laffey of Pine Richland ends up winning the title, a 3-2 victory over Dylan Evans of Chartiers Valley. Laffey also knocked off Justin Ritchie of Quaker Valley 3-0 in the semis. But Laffey had a lot of nosebleeds in this one, unfortunately, and I think that definitely stopped the momentum for both wrestlers. And obviously, we talked with Laffey at the end of our broadcast, and he mentioned that it definitely caused him to get out of his rhythm a little bit. But he did what he had to do. He scored the points when he needed to score them, controlled the match, got the win.
Yeah, I mean, that match can go back and forth. I mean, really, we talked about it before the finals. I mean, you flip a coin, and I think that is how close these guys are. And they could wrestle 10 times, and they're going to be split 5-5 right down the middle. And it just so happened to be, that Kellen got the win that night. But his progression, right, and yeah, he's number 1 in the state, right, but he's never even made it to a state tournament. So Dylan Evans, on the other hand, I mean, he's done everything. I mean, he placed third at Fargo. He was, a Super 32 medalist. He's a 2-time state medalist, right? Kellen has none of those things, right? So why it was big was because Kellen, he needed that win. And like you said, there was blood time, I think, within the first 10 seconds of that match. and it just kept on coming. And I remember you and Chris saying, like, we got to stop this. We got, just tape his face up. What are you doing? Just tape his face up. The faucet's leaking. Come on. And I think that really did mess with the match. I mean, people don't, unless you've actually been in that position before, people don't realize how much an injury or blood time really affects, because it's almost like a restart every single time. And it just really is not a good. It's not a good rhythm, right? So that affected both wrestlers. But again, I hope to see this match 4 or 5 more times, and I think we very well could.
Well, it definitely prevents any kind of like scrambles or anything like that. But I'll tell you what, I mentioned this, I think, for the first bloody nose of the finals, and we had 2 or 3 of them. They put a nose plug in,
right,
falls right out. Put a nose plug in, falls right out. Why don't they just tape it from the very beginning? Like, are we having a shortage on tape that, like, we have to do these nose plugs 4 or 5 times?
Yes.
Nose plug it, tape it, let's go. That's where it should be every single time. I don't understand why. And it was every time it was like nose plug, I fall out, nose plug. I think Laffy too was just like, tape me up, let's go. Like, this is getting crazy.
And they had one of the best medical staff. They had UPMC. They had like an assistant to Dr. Bradley there. I mean, they have the best there. So I also thought it was funny that Chris Smith said he only had 1 nosebleed in his career, and it was from Virtus Jones. Like, I think I had a nosebleed at least once a practice. I mean, maybe it's because I have a big nose, but I mean, I broke my nose in wrestling. I have a deviated septum from wrestling, and I feel like my nose just constantly bled at every match. And here's Chris Smith, a guy who's wrestled all the way through college, and he's like, I've only had 1 nosebleed in my career. I'm like, how is that possible?
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I mentioned on here, but I'm trying to think of my wrestling career. I may have had only 1 myself. Jeez. I don't think I really had any either.
You small nose people, you better. My gosh, it's a hard life having a big noggin like this.
160 pounds. Your champion was Chris Beatty of Chartiers Valley. He was a winner by a 5-2 decision over AJ Rohan of North Allegheny.
Yeah, and this was Rohan's first competition for the year, and he was back after an injury, so this was really big to have him back. And I was curious to see how he would do, in your first action of the year. And Beatty, I thought looked good. I mean, he's kind of an enigma. You can't really you look at his results and you're like, man, he's got some really good wins, and then you have some wins that you're like, what? How did you lose that? And talking to Coach Evans about it, it's like the kid just loves to wrestle, and he doesn't care who he wrestles. He'll wrestle up. He just likes to scrap, and sometimes he'll take a few losses. But he looked good here at the Allegheny tournament.
And how about the tournament for Jake Lucas of Pine Richland? He ends up finishing in 3rd place, but he actually lost in the round of 16 to Rohan and won 6 straight matches in the consolations to finish 3rd.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, younger brother of Nate Lucas, he's tough.
172 pounds, Mason Dimert of Quaker Valley. He was your winner by fall in the finals over Aaron DeLuca of Montour.
And boy, I mean, that fall was crazy. I mean, I don't even know what he did. I don't know if I don't know if you can replicate what he did. But I think it's just really because of his length. But he like did a step over, but it was with his leg instead of his arm, and somehow he like just sat on him and he got a fall. It was crazy. Like I didn't know how to, when you guys were on the call, I'm like, how are they going to explain how that was a fall?
It's not easy, that's for sure. 189 pounds, number 1 in the state in AAA versus number 2 in the state in AA. So we had 2 number 1 versus number 2s in this tournament. Max Stout of Mount Lebanon, he was your winner by major decision in the finals over Patrick Cutchember of Quaker Valley, 11-3. His second major decision, he beat Cutchember in the quarterfinals of Powerade by a major as well. And Cutchember was a little banged up. He was holding his ribs in the finals, but Stout is just on another level right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I give credit to Cutchember because, I mean, he wrestled tough. I mean, the score doesn't indicate how hard he was battling in that match, right? I mean, every takedown that Matt got was a hard-fought one, right? And like you said, Cutchember was clearly wincing in some pain, but it didn't matter. He was still going after it. But as you said, Max Stout, we know what the level he's on, and it's a different one right now. So he's having a battle with Patrick Hutchamber now is a good thing for him, because he's got a long way to go between now and returning to the state finals where he was 2 years ago.
It's just good to see that he's over that elbow injury too, right? I mean, having to end his season early last year and to see him back to 100% is definitely great to see. 215 pounds, Brian Finnerty of Thomas Jefferson decides to bump up as opposed to facing Cutchamber and Stout again, and he ends up winning the title, a 4-0 win over Aiden Buggy of North Allegheny. Buggy had a big win in the semis, 5-3 over Josh Sarasnik of Chartiers Valley.
Now, you said he decided to bump up. I think 215 is a possibility for him, to be honest with you. I think he may be looking at 215 as a weight class to compete in moving forward. I don't think Maddox Shaw is going to stay 32. I think he's going 26. I think he's a big 26 pounder, and I think probably the weight, who doesn't want to have their weight not be as tight all the time and to push himself. So I think he'll come back down. I don't know about Finnerty, and he looks pretty good at 215. I mean, he's not too undersized, I guess you would say, because Buggy's pretty big, Sarasnik's pretty big, but Finnerty may be testing the waters to stay up at 215. You look at it in the state, and it's really wide open. The number one kid in the state, Carl DiGiorgio, just lost in the Escape the Rock tournament. So I think 215 is a little bit more wide open, certainly, than 189.
We have first thing I did ask Coach Laddick. I didn't ask him about Finnerty, but I did ask about Maddox Shaw, and he said the plan is for him to get back down to 26. Just cutting that weight all the time for all these tournaments. He tested the waters of Powerade, showed he could get down and showed what he could do. But he was up a little bit, so kept him up for 32 for this tournament. But the goal is to get him back down to 26. Finnerty, on the other hand, you only obviously the state level. You're absolutely right, but also just look at the WPIAL. You got Max Stout there. You're not going to win a WPIAL championship with Max Stout there, considering what you've not to say he can't pull off the upset, but we've already seen what he's done against him. Whereas then you also have Cooper Baxter of Butler in that weight class as well. Giuliano Marion of Franklin Regional is wrestling tough. So Brody Evans of Waynesburg had a good Powerade tournament. So you got some guys there. 215. Corey Borio of Latrobe is, obviously wrestling well. Eli Makel of Waynesburg. I mean, I think Finnerty can definitely take, obviously he's beaten Josh Sarasnik of Chartiers Valley. So I would probably take that 215 angle as opposed to 189 in the WPIL.
Well, and I think this was a look to see, like, hey, how am I going to compete at that weight? And like you said, it's a little bit more open. Oh, it's a lot more open. I mean, he has a Finnerty lost to Baxter in his career, but I certainly think he and Baxter, would battle for that number 2 spot behind Max Stout. But still, just from the state perspective, I think it's just, it makes sense if he's comfortable in winning at 215, which he did this weekend.
285 pounds, Joey Schneck of Pine Richland. He was your champion by fall in the finals over Christian Flaherty of Keystone Oaks. And I don't think I've seen – we talked about how pumped Vinny was for winning his title 132. I don't think I've seen a happier wrestler than I did Joey Schneck. The biggest smile on that kid's face. Not only after the win, but also on the awards podium. Just absolutely loved it.
I know. I don't think he stopped smiling from the time, and they delayed the podium. So I think for like at least 45 minutes, he had that same ear-to-ear smile. He was super excited, and 285 wasn't a loaded class. It wasn't a loaded weight class by any stretch of the imagination. But for Joey to come out and get falls, and I think he got a fall in all of his matches. Yes. I think. That shows where he's at, and it shows why he should be considered one of the best guys in the WPIAL.
As far as the team part of it, North Allegheny comes away with the team title at 222.5. Quaker Valley number 2 at 209, and Plum rounds out your top 3 with 198.5. North Allegheny, we'll talk about them in a little bit with the team stuff, but they're obviously going to be one of the top teams in AAA. Quaker Valley, one of those top teams in AA. Speaking of the teams you mentioned, the Connellsville Duals this past weekend, and Connellsville comes away with the championship at the Connellsville Duals. A couple of big matches that they won. They knocked off Cannon McMillan 39-25. They also had knocked off Kiski as well. They knocked Kiski off 54-15. Cannon McMillan beat Kiski 49-16. But yeah, that big one was Connellsville over Cannon McMillan. And when you look at the box score, Jeff, I don't know how you really make up the points if you're Canamac.
No, I mean, to be honest, everything went Canamac's way. A lot of things went Canamac's way in that match. 39-25, but Jacob Haupt got a major over Jacob Layton. That's a good win for him. Benny had a really close win with Ruggieri 8-7, which I thought was a toss-up match. Chad Ozias and Lonzy Velma were the ones that got the momentum going for Connellsville after they get falls at 32 and 38. If you can prevent getting falls there, obviously that helps if you're Canamac. But Jesco got a major on Tyler Soule, which was, again, I thought I had that as a decision. Ansel got a pin over Slavic. Kessler, we know what he's going to do. And even Stafford, Stafford had a big weekend. He beat Enzo Merlacci from Kiski. Stafford and Furman are both 172, so they can interchange those two. So Merlacci bumps up to 72 during that duel, and Stafford knocks him off. Stafford also beat Hunter Claycomb from Connellsville, who's a super tough wrestler. I'm very impressed with him and George Schultz. But both those guys lost. Claycomb lost to Stafford 10-9, and Schultz lost to Furman 7-2. So, again, I would say Stafford match is probably a toss-up one. But, Dennis Nicholson then gets a fall over Broxton Dean in under a minute. Broxton Dean is a guy who I think, he's dangerous. That can go back and forth. And then Brandon Damai had a huge pin over Evan Petrovich, who's a freshman, but a very talented freshman. So, again, Canamac had a lot of stuff go their way. I don't know if they'll be able to make it up and make it closer. I can just say this. I'm really excited to see Connellsville and the Latrobe wrestle, man. Those two teams match up real well. We're going to talk about Latrobe here in a little bit, but, man, they're on a collision course for sure. And that's not even talking about Waynesburg.
So then I think Connellsville and Latrobe actually wrestled before the team tournament, which gives us a nice, way to find out. Let's hop down to that. I know we're going to get to it a little bit later, but Latrobe had a really strong showing this past weekend as well. Out in Colorado, they knock off the number 20 team in the nation, Pomona, 34-33, and then they end up finishing in second place in the tournament as well. A number of guys coming away with titles: Luke Willishow, Vinny Kilkeary, both coming away with championships. Nate Roth as well. Jack Pletcher comes in second place, and then Corey Borio in second. So just a strong showing for Latrobe out in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I know they were really excited about this event, and, they had been talking about it for quite a while. And talking to Chris Smith and Dan Flickinger about this, they were really, pumped up about going out to Colorado and wrestling, one of the top teams in the nation. And as you mentioned, Pomona was number 20 in the nation coming into this. So, for Latrobe to get a win there is huge. Also considering the weight class differences, they have a different set of weight classes than we do, because Pennsylvania likes to just be different. And it came down to heavyweight, and Wyatt Held got a walk-off fall to win it 34-33. And, if you haven't been on social media and saw the reaction, it was pretty cool, pretty epic, how they reacted to that fall for Wyatt Held. But overall, they're looking good. Nate Roth is back in the lineup, and he's looking solid. I heard that Gabe Golden may be coming back in. He would add another layer of talent to their lineup. So, yeah, I mean, and then they got stranded there. So they were supposed to fly out last night, and they got stranded there because of the snow. Nothing was flying into Pittsburgh, so they actually got in a workout at a local place here, and they posted some photos of that on their Twitter page. And they're waiting to come back. So I believe they're probably either back now or flying back now. I don't know. So it was a big tournament for them. It's not going to have a lot of implications for us here in the state. But just to go out there and get a big win like that as a team for that momentum and that confidence, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, now we're going to get into, how is that going to reflect? I mean, we talked about Waynesburg, and, right now they're coming in as the number 1 team. Latrobe, I think we talked about this last week, is the clear number 2. Is Connellsville the clear number 3 at this point, Jeff?
I mean, it's clear. It's clear to me. It should be clear to everybody else that it's Waynesburg, Latrobe, and Connellsville. I think you could argue between Connellsville and Latrobe, but I think, especially with Nate Roth back, it's you got to give the advantage to Latrobe. But I don't think there's anyone who can make the argument that it's not those top 3 teams, in the WPIAL. Not at this point anyway. So yeah, I think those are 1, 2, 3, and I think they're very solid 1, 2, 3 even in the state.
And you look at so you think they're 1, 2, 3 in the state as well, or do you think
no. I'm not saying they're one. No, they're clearly not. They're not 1, 2, 3 in the state.
I was going to say
teams like Becca and Nazareth. I'm saying they're a top 10 team.
Yeah.
It's
right.
AAA is not outside of Nazareth and Bethlehem Catholic. I mean, you have a team like Williamsport, Quakertown that are in the mix. But really, I think it's the winner of the WPIAL. Even the second place out of the WPIAL is going to fare very well at the state tournament in the dual section. So, I think those 3 are the clear top 3. But, I think there's some other teams on the bubble that are looking to break through to that.
And I guess the question that's come up is, can Latrobe or Connellsville beat Waynesburg?
Yeah, that's the big question in my mind, and I ran the matchups. I kind of run the matchups every other week or so, and looking at Latrobe's lineup right now, just based on head-to-heads, let's just say straight up, 106 to 285, I think Latrobe wins. However, that's without moving people around. That's without, that's pretty standard, if you will. And we know that the team portion of wrestling is nothing but standard, right? We're always moving people around and doing things, and crazy things happen all the time. Like an injury default or stalling somebody out. I don't know, something crazy will happen. But straight up, I think right now Latrobe head to head can edge them out. But again, there's a lot of question marks there, and we just haven't seen Waynesburg as a team nearly as much as we've seen Latrobe. So it's hard to really say, where these guys are at, because Noah Tustin's a guy who, he could go out and get a fall or he could get pinned, right? Eli Makel and Corey Barrero, that's a toss-up. In my mind, that's a toss-up match there. Brody Evans, I think, is a critical component to that. Which Jack Pletcher's going to show up, right? I mean, that's another question. Some of these guys are really good at getting bonus points. Other guys, they never get bonus points. So you look at the lineups head to head. It's clearly it's going to be a fun match, right? But I think just looking at the matchups, I think Latrobe certainly can hang with them and potentially beat them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's gonna be close, a lot closer than people probably thought in the beginning of the year when Waynesburg lost a couple of guys, but had so many state medalists coming back that you thought, okay, they're gonna do well here and probably run away with the WPIAL again.
I mean, even look at 138 with Nate Roth, right? I mean, having him back is so huge because him and Colton Stone King have gone back and forth, and I think the last 2 times they wrestled, they've ended in disqualifications at the Powerade and at the regional tournament. I think they both ended in disqualification. So Nate Roth was right there with him, and Stone King's a anchor on that lineup, being a state medalist, Division I recruit. But Nate Roth beat state champion Briar Priest. I know they lost, again, but I mean, there's 1-1. So him being back is critical, and 106, Luke Wilshell, Waynesburg doesn't really have anybody at that weight. Are you going to potentially bump him up, and do you have somebody else that's going to put in at 106 to get a forfeit? I don't know. Like, there's a lot to consider when looking at these two teams head to head.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to upcoming duels here in a little bit and talk about those standings. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of factors that are going to play into it, and we'll see how it all plays out here. Coming about, it's coming up. Only a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
And we're going to be into this action. Talk about another AAA team who wrestled well this past weekend at the Virginia Duals. Butler, they took third place in their American division. They beat Virginia Skyline and Westfield.
Yeah, both are tough teams from Virginia, and the Virginia Duals are always tough. And Butler had a really good showing there. And they're, again, when we look at the team stuff, you can't look out past Butler and their section.
And then obviously the big tournament, the duels that we talk about every year, the Brookville Ultimate Duels, where Burrell goes and wrestles, where you see Fort LaBeouf, Reynolds, Sagertown, Brookville, Chestnut Ridge. It's just basically your top AA tournament every single year. And Burrell this season didn't quite have the results I'm sure that they'd hoped for, but when you look at where they're at as a team, they're starting to come around. They beat Fort LaBeouf 37-30. They did drop decisions to Brookville 47-20, Sagertown 40-28, and well as Chestnut Ridge 52-19, and Reynolds 37-30. So not the showing Burrell wanted, only winning one match, but they were in a lot of those matches.
Yeah, this is tradition, right? I mean, when you look at the history of the Ultimate Duels, Burrell traditionally does not do well there, and then they come back, and this is like deja vu. This is Groundhog Day, because every year they go to the Ultimate Duels and they have a big duel the night before and they travel up, which they did this year. They wrestled Kiski and then went up. They have a few guys out of lineup, and you're like, man, Burrell, what's going on at Burrell? They went 1-3 at the Ultimate Duels, but then between now and district duels, a flip switches, right? Something changes in there, and they get better, right? They wrestle better. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Those are some of the top teams in the state. I was a little bit surprised that they lost to Reynolds because Reynolds is pretty depleted. I wasn't surprised that they lost to Chestnut Ridge because Chestnut Ridge is the real deal. They're certainly a top team in the state. But I was a little surprised by the Reynolds match. Brookville, again, they're kind of in the same boat. They have a lot of flexibility, but I thought that could have went either way. So, again, looking at the WPIAL, the question that we asked for the last 15, 16 years is anyone going to be able to top Burrell? And I don't think you can look at the Ultimate Duels and make a determination based off of that.
No, you cannot. But, one thing you can look at is the dual match, which happened this past week as well, where Mount Pleasant Best Center defeated Mount Pleasant. And Mount Pleasant was without 3 starters, so that's something to keep in mind. But, Best Center winning the matchup. Who's the team to beat now? Who's the team? I guess to me it's still Burgestown. I think Burgestown is the team in AA. But Quaker Valley had a great showing at the Allegheny County Tournament. Best Center with the win over Mount Pleasant. All 4 of those teams are in argument.
Yeah, I mean it's it's going to be a tough one because you look at Burgestown and you say, okay, they're the best of these very close neck and neck teams, and you can say a lot of what ifs with Mount Pleasant not having 3 of their guys in the lineup, but Best Center wrestled really tough, and they wrestled a good match, and they got wins where they needed to, despite giving up 3 forfeits in the match. They forfeited to Pitzer 106 and 113. So yeah, I mean it adds it throws a wrench into things a little bit. And like you said, Quaker Valley is that team where you're like, man, like, are they really going to be able to put this together? And are they going to be able to make a run? And I think they could potentially. So there's a lot more uncertainty in AA as it is most years than there is AAA. But Best Center being Mount Pleasant was a big one.
And here's the thing, it's all going to end up working itself out because, I mean, the score of that match was 43-24, Best Center over Mount Pleasant. You get those three starters back, it's going to be a close one. Now it's maybe a toss-up, but it's still kind of leaning towards Best Center right now at the moment, with those three guys even in the lineup for Mount Pleasant. So, yeah, to me, though, at the end of the day, Burgestown's going to wrestle Best Center in their section. Mount Pleasant and Burrell are going to wrestle each other in their section. And that's going to be telling because that then tells you how you're going to seed them. Quaker Valley is probably going to be that team who will probably be the number 3 seed, provided they do what they need to do in their section. And the winners of each section will be 1 and 2. And then the 2 teams that lose in the sections, in my mind, will be 4 and 5. Yeah. And that's how it's going to go in AA. And that's, because those teams wrestled each other, that really helps things out a bit. But to me, we've talked about it a lot. Burgestown is that team that I think is going to, if there's a team that's going to beat Burrell this year, it'll be Burgestown.
Well, I mean, you are like the expert of the section, subsection wrestling in the WPIAL. I mean, there's no one, and I say that kind of sarcastically, but also very true. You know the sections and subsections better than anybody else, and who's beating who. So I take your word for it. But I also agree with you that I think if there's going to be a team that beats Burrell, it's likely going to be Burgestown. But I think the fun part to me is seeing who wins each section, right? And then how they're matched up in the district bracket, because we could be having some potential upsets early on in the tournament.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and it'll be a lot of fun to see how it all shakes out. One team that would love to get into that conversation is Fraser, and they actually they're coming up. They got some really great guys, wrestling well, and obviously they have one of the best guys in the nation in Rune Lawrence, Frazier. He won the 172-pound title at Escape the Rock this past weekend. Also, Chase Kranitz of Norwin finishes in 3rd place.
Yeah, I mean, Rune had a really good tournament, as always. I mean, he comes out and pins people just left and right. He pinned the number 2 guy in AAA, Dom D'Agostino. He pinned him in I think the first period, and Rune's on a different level. He had wrestled a few of those guys at the Powerade tournament and then had some wins there. So for him, this was a big win for sure, no doubt. And Chase Kranitz got his 100th win, his 100th career win. He did lose to Dag and Condomiti from Northampton, who's a very good returning state medalist. I thought that was a good match between those two. And man, 52 in the WPIAL is just, it's loaded, it's stacked. So. We talked about Laffey and Evans, but man, there's a lot of other names on there that we're going to be seeing battle, and there's going to be some good guys not going to Hershey this year, which is obviously something we see most years.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if any one of those 5, because there's only 4 spots, will move up or down. But to me, I think it's kind of tough because both 45 and 60 don't get any easier in the WPIAL. So I think it's going to end up, they're going to battle, and whoever comes out on top comes out on top. We'll see how it all plays out. This week, Jeff, we got some really good dual matchups coming up. We have Hempfield taking on Norwin. We got Franklin Regional taking on Penn Trafford. We also have Waynesburg taking on Cannon McMillan. So a lot of really good matchups here this coming Wednesday.
Well, and as you said, I mean, this is telling to what's going to happen. I mean, you look at the team standings in AAA, right? And in Section 1A, Kiski area is undefeated, 4-0, and Penn Trafford's 4-0 in 1B. Franklin Regional and Penn Trafford head-to-head, obviously, that's a big match there for each team. Connellsville's kind of taking control of 2A. Thomas Jefferson's 3-1, and Connellsville's 4-0, and Latrobe and Hempfield, they wrestle head to head already. Latrobe and they're 3-0. Hempfield's 2-1. Norwin's 2-1. So Norwin and Hempfield obviously has a lot of factors that go into it. But 3A is interesting because you have Butler and West Allegheny and Seneca Valley. Seneca Valley is not the team of Seneca Valley's past, but they're in the mix. But Butler and West A are both 3-0, right? I think that's a good one. And North Allegheny already has a win over Pine Richland, but that was on criteria. AJ Rohan was not in the lineup for that, but if he's there, I think that makes a little bit of a difference in 3B. And of course, 4A, Cannon Mac and Waynesburg wrestle head-to-head. So that's going to decide a lot of stuff that we are kind of scratching our brains about. And that to me for Waynesburg, because we now have a common opponent with you look at Connellsville and Cannon Mac. Now you put Waynesburg up against Canemak. Now let's see how that shakes out, right? Let's see the matchups. Let's see the scores. And that's going to be very telling for me looking at the overall WPIAL landscape.
Yeah, and you mentioned Butler. They take on Seneca Valley on Wednesday, so several really good matches that'll really determine these subsections and who gets in and who doesn't. Obviously, top 2 teams in each subsection automatically qualify for the WPIAL team tournament. The third place team in each one gets an opportunity to wrestle each other, and the other side to be able to see if they can advance to the team tournament. And top 3, correct me if I'm wrong, top 3 still going to Hershey from AAA? Or is that expanded?
Well, technically it's top 3, but you have to win. The third place team has to win against District 8 winner.
That's.
I know that's, but I had to say it, right?
Yeah, I got you. And you know what? I mean, you can always get shocked and surprised. But with that said, when we're talking about 3 teams in WPIAL being top 10 in the state, that's no offense to the District 8, but it's tough to knock them off to get to that state tournament. But when you look ahead, obviously AA doesn't have as many of those key matchups coming up. But again, at the end of the day, though, there's those 5 teams that are right there. So when you look at the teams AAA, Jeff, outside of those top 3, who else? I mean, we've seen Penn Trafford and Kiski not be able to, quite hang with Connellsville in that Connellsville Duals. So I don't know. I mean, obviously Section 1 is typically always one of the toughest, but I'm not sure if, those teams may be able to catch up to those 3. But when you look at anybody else, you're looking at a Butler, West Allegheny, North Allegheny. Can anyone else kind of climb to those top 3 spots?
Well, I mean, I think those top 3 spots are pretty well secured, but I have Butler and West Allegheny circled as teams to kind of keep an eye out on and see how they develop through their section, because West Allegheny has a win over Kiski. Now, Kiski was missing Stone Joseph, and it may be a different lineup should they meet. But really, I think Butler and West A certainly are they could be that next tier of teams. But North Allegheny, I think, it's not. They could have been really good had Nick Gorman not moved to Texas, or Grant McKay still at NA. They could have been very good. Rumpler in at heavyweight, but with the team they have now, even with AJ Rohan back, I still think they're going to struggle outside of Section 3B. They beat Pine Richland on criteria, but I think Butler and West A is I think they beat them. So there's clearly, I think the top 3 are very clear, and I think between 4 and 8, you have Kiski, you have Butler, West Allegheny, and Canemak kind of all floating around in there, and Hempfield. Yeah, I would say Hempfield too. Hempfield Norwin's going to tell us a lot about where they're at, and they wrestle this Wednesday. So, Canemak to me is that team that's like, okay, you have a good team, but how's it going to match up with a balanced team like Butler that's pretty solid from top to bottom. Canemak, let's not forget, Canemak wrestled Connellsville very tough. So, I'm not saying that they're going to break through because like you said, that I don't know where they could pick up some of those wins, but clearly I think Canemak's in that conversation. They're that between that 4 and 8. I would say Butler, West Allegheny, Kiski, and Canemak are all kind of in there, with Hempfield and Norwin, the winner there, being kind of in the mix. But it's, again, very clear to me the top 3 are Waynesburg, Latrobe, and Connellsville.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but I agree with you. I think they've definitely set themselves apart as we head into the final stretch of this regular season of subsection wrestling. And really for the tournament side as well, things start to kind of die down a little bit. Still a couple of tournaments coming up. You mentioned the Buckeye Local Tournament, the Burgestown Tournament coming up. But other than that, I mean, I think teams now kind of getting set, right, for the dual postseason, getting ready for individuals. Everybody's starting to get their weights down, and you're starting to see the shifts and kind of the movement, right? I mean, we've gotten through the bulk and the heavy part of the tournaments after this past weekend, Jeff, and now we just kind of, it's almost like we got to coast for a couple of weeks until we get into It's a team side.
I mean, that's really what it is, right? We're getting guys healthy. We're getting guys down to their weight. Canon-Mac having that flexibility between Stafford and Furman at 72-89 is huge. I think that match with Waynesburg is one that you cannot miss because that's going to tell us a lot. But from that point forward, it's like you said, it's getting guys healthy, getting guys down to weight, and preparing for the what's to come. And there's gonna be a lot of good battles, man. I'm excited, and I'm obviously excited every year, but last year was, I mean, we all knew Waynesburg was going to win it. We all knew they were going to win it all. So I guess it takes a little bit of the excitement out of it. This year, there's a lot more openness. There's a lot more parity, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun between now and Hershey for the team portion. In both classes, both AA and AAA. We saw number 1 Saucon Valley go down to number 2 Notre Dame Green Pond. Chestnut Ridge blows through the Ultimate Duals. Are they a number 1 team? So that's exciting, and also obviously with teams like Nazareth, Becca, and then whoever wins the WPIAL, I think it's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun to see, because honestly, there's not a clear cut, right? I think there's a lot of openness.
Yeah, I mean, this year is going to be a lot of fun. We've talked about those top 3 in AAA, but you're right. I mean, last year it was Waynesburg was maybe not only one of the best in the WPIAL and obviously the best in the state, but also maybe one of the best in the nation.
Oh, yeah.
For how good they were. There's never going to be a team like that again, just for how strong they were. But you look at it was almost like last year we kept talking about who's 2, who's 3. But it didn't really matter because only one team could go to the state tournament. And then in AA, it was like, we felt like Burrell was going to be it, right? I mean, I don't think anyone picked away from Burrell. And it was like, hey, who's that number 2 team? And Burgestown's a really up-and-coming team this year. And so, it seemed like it was like, hey, Burrell, Burgestown, they're 1-2. But, like you said, this year we're legitimately talking about 5 teams in AA that could come away with the title right now because of just, how close those teams are. AAA, we're talking about 3 teams that could legitimately walk away with the title because of how close they are. So that's what makes this team portion, this can be so exciting to watch here in a couple of weeks.
No, I totally agree, and there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered very, very soon, right? So that's what it's all about, and I just look forward to seeing where it all shakes out, and like you said, Burgestown, and we talked about it with Phil Mary this weekend. The seeding for the district tournament, it's always one of the contentions that we have about who gets where, and I think based on how some of the sections go, it's not going to be too hard to seed. If everything goes kind of not as planned, but nothing crazy happens.
Yeah, the only interesting one that's going to be to me is going to be AAA, because Latrobe and Connellsville are in the same section, so they're going to wrestle each other. Is that will they try to separate them at all because of that fact? Like, hey, the winner gets a 1 seed, but how could you seed them over Waynesburg if Waynesburg takes care of business and dominates Connellsville, let's say, and they're going to wrestle Connellsville probably a couple of times, not only on Wednesday but also potentially in the section finals. If they go in and take care of business, you have to seed Waynesburg 1. They're the returning champs. They go out and they do what they need to do. So you're probably going to see Latrobe Connellsville twice, not only section finals, but potentially a WPIAL semi, because I don't think you can seed away from those teams. And it helps, the seeding committee, because they get to see those matchups, just like in AA. Burgestown beats Best Center, let's just say. And then let's just say Burrell beats Mount Pleasant. It's pretty simple. Burrell 1, Burgestown 2, Quaker Valley 3, Mount Pleasant, and Best Center get to wrestle again 4-5. What'll throw things off is like, okay, if Mount Pleasant beats Burrell, Best Center beats Burgestown, or Burgestown beats Best Center, then what happens? Then how do you seed it? But at the end of the day, who beats who kind of is the trump card and helps that committee pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think historically the committee has been cognizant of the fact that the 2 best teams in the WPIAL could be from the same section, right? And I think they're not afraid to separate that, even though you have the champions don't always just get an automatic top 4, right?
Right.
There's always some room for adjustments and change, and I think that depends on if Waynesburg gets through Canon-Mac. That's not an easy match, right? So there's a lot, again, what we just said. I sound like a broken record, but we're going to see a lot of this come to fruition after the sections and after some of these guys go head to head, because, if Waynesbury beats Cannon Mac or Latrobe beats Connellsville, it's pretty clear to me what it's going to be, right? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, right? That's just how I feel. But my opinion's normally always right, so, no, you don't think so? I'm just kidding. I don't think it's always right. Just like 90% of the time.
All right, whenever we'll wrap up the show right now, and I just hope you can get your head back upstairs to see your son for the rest of the night.
My hat, I'm gonna have to readjust my hat. It's too small, because my head's getting too big here. Maybe it's either my head or my hair. I can't tell which, Greg.
I can't either because I can't see you.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Want to thank Vinny Citrano for joining us. Congratulations to him again on winning the Allegheny title, and obviously, thanks to you, Jeff, for all the going out and taping these tournaments for folks and being able to provide it here on Rockfin, to be able to see the Allegheny County Championships, be able to see the Midwinter Mayhem. I'm giving your head an even bigger ego boost for a second, but it's great that PA Power has been able to not only provide the show like you and I have, but also just the be able to show these tournaments to folks who may not be able to make them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a year ago we were certainly struggling to figure out the whole streaming thing, and now I feel like we've got a pretty decent understanding of what we need to do. So we're going to be streaming the Ultimate Warrior Tournament here in 2 weeks up at West Branch High School. I feel like we're just getting better, and that's the goal here for us at PA Power, is just to improve and have access to wrestling and have these tournaments that typically wouldn't be seen, have the ability to stream them. It may cost a little bit to watch, but for me, it costs a lot of money to have equipment, to have guys that come and do give up a day with their family to do broadcasting, and that doesn't come for free, so it's for what you get. I think it's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty nice bang for your buck, but we're going to get better. I can't wait to see in 5 years where we're at, because we've already made some strides in 1 year. So I do appreciate that, Greg, with all honesty. So
yeah. And folks that are being able to listen and watch our show here today, make sure you do I'm sure people always share logins and everything else, but make sure you get as many subscribers as you can, because maybe a few bucks to you, I mean, it's definitely, it costs a lot. Jeff's right to put on a production like that for the tournaments and for the shows that we're doing and just everything in general, just to be able to stream this stuff. So the ability to go on and subscribe definitely helps us be able to continue to do more. And obviously Jeff, I don't know how you do it, man. But I'm surprised your wife allows you to do what you do. But
she's the real hero in all this. My wife she's the honest to God, the real hero, because my perspective on life has changed dramatically since having a child. But my wife has been super supportive and kind of amazing. But yeah, it's like you said, it's nice to spread the word of PA Power and help out as much as you can, because it's what keeps us going, right? We're going to do it regardless, but it helps keep some things going, and it helps us grow and continue to grow the sport of wrestling.
And that's all we want to do. So really appreciate everyone watching and listening in here today to WarUp on a WPIAL. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We'll see you next week on WarUp on WPIAL here on PA Power Wrestling.